On my mom's birthday, she raised her glass and said, "The best gift is you leaving my life." So I packed up, sold the house, froze every account, and disappeared. A week later, for 35 years, I thought being a good daughter meant sacrificing everything. I spent my life trying to please my mother, Evelyn. So, on her 65th birthday, planning the perfect dinner at her favorite Boston restaurant, I expected a moment of gratitude. Instead, when she raised her crystal glass, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "The best gift would be for you to leave my life entirely." What she didn't know was just how completely I would take her words to heart. To truly understand why those words sliced through me that night, why they shattered something deep inside, you need our history. My childhood, it was a symphony of her disapproval. "Stand up straight, Cassandra," she'd bark, yanking my shoulders back so hard it left red marks. "Smile, but not like that. You look ridiculous." Nothing I did was ever good enough. My art was messy, my grades were never perfect, my clothes were never stylish. While other mothers hung crayon drawings on refrigerators like trophies, mine would point out every flaw before tossing them in the trash. It was like I was constantly failing an unspoken test. My dad, though, he was different. He was my warmth, my encouragement. "That's my bright girl," he'd say, his eyes crinkling as I showed him a science project or a story. He was the buffer, shielding me from my mother's icy criticism. But then, when I was 12, everything changed. Dad died suddenly of a heart attack. I found him in the backyard, screaming for help while Mom was at her bridge club. I still remember the flashing ambulance lights, the frantic CPR. But mostly, I remember her first words to me at the hospital. "Why weren't you watching him more carefully? You knew his heart was weak." Those words, they planted themselves deep in my psyche. Somehow, in my mother's narrative, I became partially responsible for his death. It was the beginning of a guilt she'd cultivate in me for decades. My teenage years became an endless, desperate quest for approval that never came. I joined every club, maintained a 4.0 GPA, captained the debate team, edited the school paper. Each achievement was met with, "Jennifer's daughter got into Harvard," or "Lisa's daughter has better stage presence." Despite her constant discouragement, I earned a full scholarship to Northwestern. "You'll probably drop out after a semester," she sneered when I showed her the acceptance letter. "College is harder than you think." But I didn't. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major. Mom didn't even attend, claiming a migraine. My relationship suffered the most from her interference. At 22, I dated Michael, a kind medical student. Mom spent dinner subtly undermining me. "Cassandra was always so awkward with boys. I'm surprised she caught your attention." A week later, she called him privately to tell him about my emotional issues and how I needed more therapy. He broke it off. This pattern repeated with Ryan at 25 and James at 28. Each time, she found a way to sabotage any happiness I found. "I'm just looking out for you," she'd insist. "You have terrible judgment in men." Yet, through it all, I built a successful career. By 35, I was a senior financial advisor, handling portfolios for high-net-worth clients. I bought a beautiful condo in Boston's Back Bay. I had created a stable life for myself. And still, I supported her. After Dad died, she never worked, living off his insurance and pension. When those dwindled, I began supplementing her income. I paid her property taxes, utilities, and funded her extravagant lifestyle. Every Sunday, I'd drive to her house, listen to her complain about her neighbors, her friends, and most often, me. This year, for her 65th, I planned something truly special. A private room at Fleming's Steakhouse, her favorite. Her closest friends, a professional photographer, a custom cake, and for months I'd been working with a jeweler to restore my grandmother's sapphire bracelet, a family heirloom she'd always coveted, but my grandmother had left to me. I decided it was time to give it to her, hoping this generous gesture would finally earn her approval. "This birthday will be different," I told my therapist. "I think she'll finally see how much I care." My therapist just gave me a concerned look. Deep down, I knew I was setting myself up for disappointment. But hope is a stubborn thing. The evening of her birthday, everything was perfect. The private dining room gleamed with candlelight. White roses and hydrangeas. Her favorites adorned the tables. The chef prepared her preferred appetizers. I arrived an hour early to ensure every detail was flawless. My heart was a frantic drumbeat of anticipation and anxiety. The manager smiled. "Your mother must be very special." "She is," I replied, the words automatic, my stomach tightening with unspoken complications. Guests arrived, warmly greeting me. "Your mother is so lucky to have you," her oldest friend Eleanor remarked. I smiled politely, wondering if Evelyn shared that sentiment. At 7:15, Mom arrived, impeccably dressed in a black gown I'd bought her. I moved to hug her, but she offered her cheek. "The valet took forever," she declared, her first words to me. "And this room is too dark. Who selected these flowers? Hydrangeas make me sneeze." Hydrangeas! They'd been her favorite my entire life. I'd watched her plant them every spring. I said nothing, just signaled the waiter for her wine. Dinner proceeded with her holding court, barely acknowledging me, except to demand I tell the waiter her steak was overcooked, though I could see it was perfectly medium rare. After the main course, before dessert, I stood to present her gift. The small blue velvet box felt heavy in my hands. "Mom," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I wanted to give you something special." I handed her the box. This was grandmother's bracelet. I had it restored. The table fell silent. The sapphires twinkled. It was thousands of dollars of work. She looked at it for a long moment, then closed the box with a snap. "Your grandmother should have left this to me in the first place," she said flatly. "She always did favor you, inappropriately." The air grew thick with awkward silence. Eleanor gently touched her arm. "Evelyn, it's a beautiful gift." My mother just placed the box on the table, saying nothing more. My cheeks burned with humiliation. When the cake arrived, glowing with candles, everyone sang. My mother smiled, for the photographer, then stood to make a toast. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "It's nice to be surrounded by true friends." She didn't look at me. As I get older, I find myself valuing authenticity more and more. She raised her glass higher, then finally turned her gaze to me. What happened next plays in slow motion in my memory. "If I were to wish for a gift this year," she continued, her eyes cold, "the best gift would be for certain people to just leave my life entirely. No more pretense, no more obligation, just freedom from relationships that were never meant to be." The room went completely still. Her friends shifted uncomfortably, some staring at their plates. There was no mistaking her meaning. "To another year," she finished, taking a sip of wine as if she hadn't just publicly eviscerated her only child. I sat frozen, unable to move or speak. The cake sat untouched. The photographer, sensing the tension, quietly packed up. For the rest of the evening, my mother chatted with her friends as if nothing had happened. I moved through the motions of hosting, my body on autopilot, her words replaying over and over. The drive to take her home was silent. At her house, she gathered her things, including the bracelet box, which she hadn't opened again. "Dinner was adequate," she said, opening the car door. "Next time, choose a better restaurant. Fleming's has gone downhill." I couldn't help myself. "Did you mean what you said? About wanting me out of your life?" She paused, one foot on the curb. "Cassandra, don't be so sensitive. I was making a general statement." "It didn't feel general, Mom. It felt very specific." She sighed heavily. "If you choose to take everything personally, that's your problem. But yes, our relationship has always been a burden. I did my duty raising you. I'm not obligated to pretend we have some special bond now. I pay your bills," I said quietly. "I maintain your house. I take you to every doctor's appointment. And you never let me forget it, do you?" She snapped. "You think your financial support buys you the right to be in my life? That's your father and you, always keeping score." She slammed the car door and walked to her house without looking back. I sat in that driveway for 20 minutes, tears streaming down my face. That night, lying in bed, a fundamental truth hit me. Nothing would ever change. No achievement, no gift, no sacrifice would ever be enough to make my mother love me. For 35 years, I had been running on a hamster wheel. As dawn broke, I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, legal pad in hand, making lists and plans. By 6 a.m., I had a complete strategy for disappearing from my mother's life, not just emotionally, but practically and financially. First, I called my office. 2 weeks of emergency personal leave. I had months of unused vacation, always too busy caring for her. Next, I called James Wilson, a realtor I knew. I need to sell my condo quickly and discreetly, I told him. No public listings, no open houses. Find a private cash buyer, even if it means below market value. Are you in trouble, Cassandra? He asked, concerned. No trouble, I assured him. Just making necessary changes. By no. Every automatic payment, every financial connection. Gregory reviewed my documents. This is extensive, he noted. You're currently paying for her property taxes, utilities, credit card minimums, car insurance, medical copays. Yes, I cut him off. And I want it all stopped immediately. May I ask why? This is quite sudden. It's time for both of us to live independently, I said simply. We spent 3 hours restructuring my life. I froze the joint checking account where I deposited her expenses. I canceled all automatic payments from my accounts to her creditors. I removed myself as an authorized user on her credit cards and her as the beneficiary on my life insurance and retirement accounts. What about the mortgage on her house? Gregory asked. You've been making those payments for 5 years. Stop. Those too, I said firmly. The house is in her name. The responsibility is hers. From there, I went to the post office, forwarding my mail to a new P.O. box. I called every shared service provider, home security, lawn care, and removed my name. I was meticulous. I left no loose ends, no forgotten automatic payments, no financial ties that could pull me back into her orbit. Back at my condo, I packed only what I truly needed: clothes, important documents, irreplaceable photos of my father, a few sentimental items. Everything else, I decided, could be sold with the condo or donated. As I packed, I realized how little I actually cared about these possessions. So many had been bought to impress her, to meet her expectations of what my life should look like. The expensive art, the formal dining set, the designer clothes, all could stay behind. That evening, I wrote my mother a letter. It took 7 drafts to express my feelings without anger or accusation. Mom, you said the best gift would be for me to leave your life. I am giving you that gift. By the time you read this, I will be gone. The financial support I have provided has ended. The house bills and all expenses are now solely your responsibility. This is not done out of anger, but acceptance. You are right that our relationship has been based on obligation rather than love. I release us both from that obligation. Do not try to find me. I do not wish to be found. Cassandra. I sealed the letter, drove to her house late that night, and slipped it under her door. I walked away without looking back. That night, I checked into a hotel under a different name, paying cash. Lying on that generic bed, I felt a surreal mix of emotions, searing grief, but also a profound, shocking relief. For the first time, I wasn't responsible for my mother's happiness, comfort, or financial security. The weight that lifted from my shoulders was so immense, I actually gasped aloud in the empty room. Over the next week, my plan unfolded with mechanical precision. James found a cash buyer for my condo, accepting 15% below market value for a quick private sale. I opened new bank accounts at a different institution, transferred my assets. I deactivated my social media, got a new phone number. I took only what fit in my car, driving west with no specific destination. Each mile put physical distance between my old life and whatever came next. I stopped checking my old email. I didn't answer unknown numbers. I severed every tether. The first week of freedom was disorienting. Habit had me reaching for my phone to check on my mother, to make sure she'd taken her medication. I'd catch myself planning Sunday visits that would never happen. Guilt would crash over me like a wave, leaving me breathless. But beneath the guilt and grief ran a current of something unfamiliar. Possibility. For the first time, my decisions affected only me. My time was entirely my own. My resources, substantial after years of success, were mine to direct. I had disappeared from my mother's life. What I didn't expect was how thoroughly I would disappear from my own former life as well. The Cassandra who had existed in Boston, the dutiful daughter constantly seeking approval, was gone too. Who would take her place remained to be seen. 1 week after I disappeared, my mother began trying to contact me. At first, her messages to my old email and voicemails to my disconnected number were irritated, not concerned. Cassandra, The Lawn. Service says you canceled. Call me immediately. The electric company claims the automatic payment stopped. Fix this today. My prescriptions need refilling. Where are you? She never mentioned my letter. In her mind, I was still responsible for her life. 10 days after I left, my former assistant, Megan, emailed my new address, which I'd only given to her and my therapist. Your mother came to the office today, she wrote. She was very upset, demanding to know where you were. Security had to escort her out when she started yelling. I thanked Megan but provided no details. The same day, Eleanor called my therapist's office. Dr. Winters, bound by confidentiality, revealed nothing, but relayed the message during our next phone session. Your mother appears to be escalating, Dr. Winters said carefully. Eleanor said, she's been calling everyone you know, becoming increasingly frantic. 2 weeks in, my mother discovered her house payment was overdue. This, according to Eleanor's message, sent her into a tailspin. She hadn't made a mortgage payment in 5 years and had apparently forgotten the process entirely. Social media became her next battleground, though I had deactivated my accounts. Friends forwarded screenshots of her posts, which grew more dramatic by the day. My daughter has abandoned me without warning, she wrote. After all I sacrificed for her, she has left her elderly mother without support or care. Please help me find her. The comments were filled with sympathetic responses from people who knew only her version of events. A few who knew us both expressed skepticism, but were quickly shouted down. 3 weeks after my disappearance, my mother received notice that her joint account with me had been frozen. According to Eleanor, who continued updating my therapist, this was when reality truly began to set in. She went to the bank and made quite a scene, Eleanor reported. They explained the account was frozen and suggested she open a new one with her own funds. She said she had no funds, that Cassandra handled all that. My mother had never bothered to understand her own financial situation. Despite a modest pension and Social Security, she had always relied on my supplemental support. Without it, she faced a harsh reality. A month into my absence, my mother received notice that her credit card payments were past due. All 6 of her cards were maxed out, minimum payments always covered by my money. Now she faced over $40,000 in credit card debt with no way to pay it. When James Wilson placed a sold sign in front of my condo, my mother drove there in a panic, only to find new owners moving in. They had no information about me. 5 weeks after I left, my mother missed her second mortgage payment and received her first formal warning from the bank. This, coupled with her mounting credit card debt, caused her first health crisis. Eleanor found her collapsed in her kitchen, hyperventilating from an anxiety attack. At the hospital, her blood pressure was dangerously high, and the doctor prescribed medication for anxiety and hypertension. She kept asking for you, Eleanor told my therapist. It was the first time I saw her actually worried about you, rather than what you could do for her. After 6 weeks, my mother left her first voicemail that wasn't demanding or accusing. Her voice sounded smaller, older. Cassandra, I don't understand why you've done this. I need you to come home. I miss you. The last part sounded forced, unpracticed, as if expressing affection was a foreign language to her. 2 months after I left, my mother received foreclosure warnings. Her house, worth nearly $1 million in Brooklyn's expensive market, had substantial equity, but she had no idea how to access it or manage a sale. Eleanor, despite being 80 herself, helped my mother meet with a financial advisor. He explained her situation in stark terms: sell the house, pay off the debt, and find a more affordable living situation, or face bankruptcy and foreclosure. Your mother finally broke down, Eleanor reported. She admitted that she drove you away. She showed me the letter you left. It was the first time I've seen her take responsibility for anything in the 40 years I've known her. 3 months after my disappearance, my mother wrote me a letter. Eleanor forwarded it to my therapist, who asked if I wanted to read it. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. The letter was unlike anything I had ever received from my mother. Her usual perfect penmanship was shaky. The paper wrinkled as if it had been crumpled and smoothed out multiple times. Cassandra, I have spent these months angry at you for abandoning me. Yesterday I found a photo album in the attic. We create through choice can teach us how to heal the wounds inflicted by the family we were born into. Daniel and I are building a life based on mutual respect, open communication, and genuine affection. His family has welcomed me with a warmth I never knew was possible. My circle of friends continues to grow, each relationship teaching me something new about healthy connection. As for my mother and me, we proceed carefully, each interaction a small test of our new boundaries and understanding. There are still difficult moments, old patterns that try to reassert themselves. But now we have tools to recognize and redirect these tendencies before they cause new damage. At her most recent birthday dinner, a quiet affair at a restaurant, near her apartment, she raised her glass in a toast very different from the one that changed our lives 2 years ago. To second chances, she said simply. And to the daughter who was brave enough to leave so that both of us could find better versions of ourselves. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself and others is the courage to vanish until they see your true worth, her eyes never leaving my face. Would you sit with me, just for a few minutes? I hesitated, then gestured to a small table by the window. We sat awkwardly, like strangers who had once been mother and daughter. I didn't tell anyone. Except Eleanor, I said. She nodded, understanding. You look well. Different, but well. So do you, I replied, and meant it. There was a softness to her that hadn't existed before. The harsh lines of perpetual disapproval somewhat faded. After a few minutes of strange small talk, I suggested we walk to the park across the street. Neutral ground, but more private than the bustling cafe. We sat on a bench, leaving careful space between us. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then my mother did something I had never seen her do. She cried. Not the manipulative tears she'd sometimes use to get her way, but silent, dignified tears she tried to wipe away discreetly. I'm sorry, she said, her voice steady despite the tears. I never thought I'd see you again. I never planned to come back, I admitted. She nodded. I understand why. I've had a lot of time to think about everything. Eleanor mentioned you joined a support group. Yes. Parents estranged from adult children, PEAC they call it. She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. At first I went to learn how to get you back. But what I learned instead was why you left. She turned slightly to face me, her hands clasped tightly. The other parents there, they all had stories about their ungrateful children who abandoned them for no reason. But as they talked, I began to see the patterns, the control, the criticism, the emotional manipulation. I recognized myself in their stories, and it was uncomfortable. My therapist, Dr. Collins, helped me understand something I never wanted to face. She took a deep breath. I treated you the way my mother treated me. This was new information. My grandmother, who had died when I was 10, had always seemed like a saint in family stories. Your grandmother? My mother nodded. She was cruel. Nothing I did was ever good enough. She compared me constantly to my cousins, to neighbors' children. She told me I was the disappointment of her life. Her voice caught. Sound familiar? I felt a chill despite the warm spring day. You never told me. I never told anyone. I was ashamed somehow, as if her treatment of me was my fault. She looked down at her hands. When you were born, I swore I'd be different. But I didn't know how. I had no model for good mothering, only perfect images from magazines that I could never live up to. That explains some things, I said carefully. But it doesn't excuse them. No, she agreed immediately. It doesn't. Nothing excuses how I treated you, especially after your father died. I was jealous of your relationship with him. He knew how to love you in a way I didn't know how to love anyone. The frankness of this admission stunned me. My mother had never acknowledged my father's superior parenting, let alone admitted jealousy of our bond. After he died, I blamed you because I couldn't bear to blame myself for not being there when he needed me. And then over the years, it became a habit, making you responsible for my happiness, my comfort, my everything. She wiped away another tear. It was wrong, Cassandra. All of it was wrong. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of decades of pain between us. I brought something for you, she said finally, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a worn leather journal. I've been writing this since you left. My therapist suggested it might help me understand my behavior and its impact on you. She held it out to me. You don't have to read it, but if you ever want to understand, it's all there. My childhood, my marriage to your father, my failures as your mother, and my work to become someone different. I took the journal, feeling its weight in my hands. Thank you, I said, not knowing if I would ever open it. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she continued. I'm not even asking to be part of your life again. I just wanted you to know that I understand now why you had to leave, and that I'm truly sorry for making that necessary. As we parted that day, there was no tearful reconciliation, no promises of a restored relationship. Instead, there was something more valuable: truth. For the first time, we had spoken honestly about our shared past and the damage done. I live in Seattle now, I told her as we stood to leave. I have a good life there. She smiled a genuine smile, without bitterness. I'm glad. That's what I should have wanted for you all along. I can't promise anything, I said carefully. But if you'd like, we could exchange emails, just see how it goes. I would like that very much, she replied, her voice steady, but her eyes bright with unshed tears. We agreed to a limited correspondence, emails only for 3 months. No phone calls, no visits. Just written words that could be considered carefully before being sent or read. As I watched her walk back to her apartment building, shoulders straight, but without the rigid control I remembered, I felt something unexpected. Hope. Not for the mother-daughter relationship I had always craved as a child, but for a new, more honest connection between two flawed adults who shared a painful history, but might possibly find a way forward. On the plane back to Seattle, I held the journal, but didn't open it. Some truths needed to be approached slowly, with care and support. I would share it with Dr. Matthews first, then decide if and when I was ready. Daniel met me at the airport, his calm presence a balm after the emotional turbulence of the trip. How did it go? He asked simply as we drove home. Honestly, I replied, nothing like I expected, and maybe, just maybe, better than I feared. 2 years have passed since I vanished from my mother's life. In that time, I've built something I never thought possible. A life defined by peace rather than constant anxiety, by genuine connection rather than obligation, by self-worth rather than desperate approval-seeking. My career in Seattle has flourished. I was made partner at the firm last year, specializing in helping women achieve financial independence after divorce or widowhood. The work feels meaningful in a way my Boston position never did, perhaps because I understand firsthand the power of financial security in creating freedom. Daniel proposed 6 months ago on a hiking trail overlooking the Olympic Mountains. Unlike my previous relationships, our connection has grown slowly and steadily, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. When I said yes, it was with complete confidence, rather than the nagging doubt that had accompanied major decisions in my past. My relationship with my mother has evolved into something I never imagined possible. Our email correspondence gradually expanded to include occasional phone calls. Last Christmas, I invited her to visit Seattle, and to my surprise, she came. Watching her interact with Daniel and his family was eye-opening. She was quieter, more observant, less quick to judge or criticize. When Daniel's niece showed her a drawing, my mother admired it sincerely without pointing out flaws or making comparisons. It was as if she was learning how to be a grandmother by watching Daniel's parents with their grandchildren. Your mother is not what I expected from your stories, Daniel said, after she returned to Boston. She's not the same person, I replied, realizing the truth of it as I spoke. Neither am I. We're planning a small wedding for next spring. When I hesitantly asked if she would like to attend, my mother's response surprised me. I would be honored, she wrote, but I will understand if you change your mind. This day should be perfect for you, not stressful because of my presence. This consideration of my feelings, this willingness to step back if needed, was evidence of how far she had come. 2 years ago, she would have either demanded a central role or refused out of spite. My mother continues her therapy and support group. She volunteers at a community garden and teaches art classes at her senior living facility. We will never have the close mother-daughter bond that some of my friends enjoy. Too much damage was done too early, and some wounds, while healed, leave permanent scars. But we have something different, something hard-won. Through separation, self-reflection, and deliberate change, we have an honest relationship between two adults who see each other clearly, with all our flaws and strengths. The journal she gave me sits on my bookshelf. I finally read it with Dr. Matthews' support 6 months after my Boston visit. Its pages contained pain I had never imagined, insights I had never expected, and a perspective on our shared history that helped me understand, if not excuse, the dynamics that shaped our relationship. Looking back on my decision to disappear, I see now that it was necessary not just for my healing, but for hers as well. As long as I remained the dutiful daughter, absorbing her criticism and meeting her needs, neither of us could change. It was only in my absence that she was forced to confront her behavior and its consequences. Not everyone will understand my choice. Some might think me cruel for leaving an elderly parent without support. Others might question why I ever allowed contact to resume. But I've learned that healing rarely follows a straight or simple path. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for ourselves and others is to disappear until we are seen for our true worth. Sometimes the people who hurt us most deeply can change, given enough time and motivation. And sometimes the family pictures of you growing up that I had forgotten about. Looking at your face in those photos, I saw something I never allowed myself to see before. How much you were hurting, even as a child, because of me. I was not a good mother to you. I was jealous of your relationship with your father. After he died, I blamed you because blaming myself was too painful. I resented you for being young and having opportunities I never had. None of this is an excuse. I am not asking for money or help. The house is being sold next month. I am moving to a senior apartment that I can afford on my pension and Social Security. I understand why you left. I would have left too. I am sorry. Mom. The letter contained no demands, no guilt trips, no manipulation. For the first time in my life, my mother had seen me as a separate person with valid feelings. A week later, Eleanor sent another update. My mother had joined a support group for parents estranged from their adult children. She was seeing a therapist, weekly. She was learning to do things for herself that she had always relied on others to handle. On her next birthday, exactly 1 year after the dinner that changed everything, Eleanor sent a final message. Evelyn celebrated quietly at home. She had a small cake she bought herself. She told me it was the first birthday where she truly understood what she had lost. Not the financial support or the practical help, but you. Just you. While my mother was confronting her new reality, I was building mine. After 2 weeks of driving across the country, I settled in Seattle, as far from Boston as I could get. The constant rain and gray skies matched my mood those first few months, but the stunning beauty of the Pacific Northwest began to heal something in me. I found a modest apartment in Queen Anne with a view of Puget Sound. Unlike my Boston condo, I furnished this place entirely to my own taste. Simple, comfortable furniture in blues and greens that reminded me of the ocean. No formal dining room, no guest room designed to impress. Just spaces that felt like home to me. Using my experience and credentials, I found a position at a boutique financial firm specializing in ethical investments. It was smaller than my Boston firm, the clients less wealthy, but the culture emphasized work-life balance and genuine service. We value advisors who care about their clients as people, not just portfolios, the managing partner told me. It was a profound shift. My next priority was therapy. Dr. Matthews specialized in childhood trauma and toxic family dynamics. Unlike my Boston therapist, who had gently encouraged reconciliation, Dr. Matthews validated my decision to separate from my mother. Estrangement is sometimes the healthiest choice, she told me. Not every relationship can or should be saved. Those words gave me permission to stop feeling guilty, to stop second-guessing the decision that had allowed me to breathe freely for the first time in decades. Making friends proved more challenging. In Boston, most of my connections were through my mother or work. In Seattle, I had to learn to form relationships based purely on common interests. I joined a hiking group, a book club, a community garden. Slowly, I built a circle of friends who knew nothing about my past, who liked me for who I was, not what I could be for them. The first holiday season alone was difficult. Thanksgiving brought a wave of grief so intense I spent the day in bed, looking at old photos of my father, crying for the family I never truly had. Christmas brought anxiety dreams, but New Year's Eve marked a turning point. My new friend Stephanie invited me to a small gathering. There, I met Daniel, a high school English teacher with kind eyes and a quiet sense of humor. We talked for hours. When he asked for my number, I hesitated, old fears surfacing, but I gave it to him anyway. A small act of courage that felt enormous. Our first few dates were nothing like my Boston relationships. No pressure to impress, no calculations about what my mother would think. We simply enjoyed each other's presence. Meeting Daniel's family was an education in healthy dynamics. His parents disagreed without contempt, expressed affection without strings, and showed interest without trying to control. The first time his mother hugged me goodbye, I stood stiff with surprise before awkwardly returning the embrace. "Your family is so normal," I told Daniel afterward. "It's kind of amazing." He laughed. "They have their quirks, but yes, they're pretty great." 6 months into my new life, I had my first major breakthrough in therapy. Dr. Matthews asked me to write a letter to my younger self, the child who tried so hard to earn her mother's love. "Dear little Cassandra," I wrote, "it was never your job to make Mom happy. Her unhappiness lived inside her long before you were born. You didn't cause it and you could never fix it. You were a good daughter. You were worthy of love exactly as you were." Reading those words aloud in Dr. Matthews' office, I sobbed until my throat hurt. For the first time, I truly believed them. That same week, I received the letter from my mother. Reading her words, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Validation that my experience had been real, sorrow for the relationship we never had, and a strange, tentative hope that perhaps she was capable of change. I didn't respond immediately. "There's no rush," Dr. Matthews assured me. "Take all the time you need to decide what's best for you." The 7-month mark brought another milestone. I was promoted at work after bringing in several significant new clients. My approach, focused on understanding client values and goals rather than just maximizing returns, had proven successful. "You have a gift for making people feel heard," my boss told me. It was the first professional compliment I'd received that had nothing to do with numbers or performance metrics. Dating Daniel continued to teach me about healthy relationships. When we disagreed, there was no silent treatment, no threats of abandonment, no scorekeeping. We simply talked it through. When he told me he loved me for the first time, I panicked, pulling away for a week. He gave me space, but made it clear he was still there. When I finally explained my fears, he listened without judgment. "Love shouldn't be scary," he said simply. "It should feel like coming home." As the 1-year mark of my departure from Boston approached, I received another update from Eleanor. My mother had sold her house, paid off her debts, and moved to a senior living apartment. She was taking art classes, joined a book club. The photo Eleanor attached showed my mother looking older, but somehow softer, smiling tentatively, holding a watercolor she'd painted. Looking at that photo, I made a decision I never thought I would make. I would return to Boston, not to stay, not to rescue, but to see for myself who my mother had become in my absence. After a year of building my new life, I flew back to Boston with a mixture of dread and curiosity. Daniel offered to come, but this was a journey I needed to take alone. I didn't tell my mother I was coming. I wasn't ready for a planned reunion with its weight of expectations. I booked a hotel downtown and spent the first day reacquainting myself with the city. Boston felt familiar and foreign, like a dream remembered upon waking. I walked through the public garden, past my old office, my former condo. These places that had once defined my existence now seemed to belong to someone else's life. On my second day, I visited Eleanor, the only person besides my therapist who knew I was in town. At 81, she was still sharp and insightful. "Your mother has changed," she told me over tea. "Not completely, mind you. She still has her moments. But there's a humility to her now that I never thought I'd see." "Do you think I should see her?" I asked. Eleanor considered carefully. "Only you can decide that, dear. But I will say this. The woman who told you to leave her life is not entirely the same woman who lives in that senior apartment now." I hadn't planned to see my mother that day. But as I left Eleanor's building, I found myself driving toward Brooklyn automatically. Her new address was a modest complex for seniors, nothing like the stately colonial home she'd lived in for decades. I parked across the street, intending just to see the building and leave. But as I sat in my rental car, I saw her walking toward the entrance, carrying a small grocery bag. She moved more slowly, her posture less rigid. Without conscious decision, I got out of the car. We nearly collided at the coffee shop next door to her building. I'd decided to get a coffee to calm my nerves. And there she was, in line ahead of me. She didn't recognize me at first. My hair was shorter, my expression more relaxed. It was only when the barista called out Cassandra for my order that she turned, her eyes widening in shock. "Cassandra?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, Mom." We stood frozen, the bustle of the coffee shop continuing around us. Finally, she spoke again. Are you okay?" The question surprised me. In all our years, she had rarely asked about my well-being with genuine concern. "I am," I said simply. "Are you?" She nodded.